On November 6, 2012, Americans voted to legalize marijuana in Colorado and Washington state.
That means people can smoke it just for the fun of it.
But what about the rest of us? Now what happens? From the creators of American Drug War and how weed won the West.
If those farmers found out that they were growing the mother of all healing plants right in their backyard, how long would these drug companies be in business?
They asked doctors to take cash off his anti-nausea and his pain medication and secretly gave him marijuana oil.
It's easier for these doctors to believe in miracles than it is for them to believe in cannabis.
I think cannabis is a medicine that is anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and probably has some direct activity against cancer cells.
Our guest today is Kevin Booth, filmmaker, producer of America's Drug War, The Last White Hope. That's his first documentary, and now he's following that up with a second one. Now, the first one really kind of focused a lot on prohibition, about the corruption in our government with the DEA, the CEA, talked about Freeway Ricky Ross, who was considered to be the person who kind of started the crack epidemic, and he talked about the roots of the CIA and that. So that kind of focused on government corruption and the prohibition aspect. This one really focuses more on a personal story. This is American Drug War 2. It's really kind of talking about the effect on children. You know, the government always tries to sell us their latest program or their latest war on whatever by fear, and especially fear that is focused on protecting our children. So Kevin Booth really went to the heart of the issue with this documentary, and it's going to be a real eye-opener, I think, for a lot of people. Kevin, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate it. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the government put so much energy into convincing us that the drug war was in place to save our children. And so I thought the only way to follow up the first American Drug War film was to show basically the effects that the drug war is truly having on children, which is exactly the opposite, of course, of what the government has been selling everybody.
Yeah, it's amazing when we've seen these recent breaking story about this family in Florida that had their child taken away while they were on vacation in Louisiana. CPS took it away because of issues of marijuana. This is a family, both the mother and father were engineers. They had a very functional family, 2 young sons. After having their sons in CPS for almost a year, they had put together a plan. They, quote unquote, kidnapped their sons, took them to Cuba. But unfortunately, the Cuban government did not give them asylum. Now the parents, who were functioning members of society, are now in prison, and their children are now gone in CPS. And the stories that you have about what happens to children once they get into foster care are just amazing in this documentary.
Well, you know, I mean, we decided to get into it. And to be honest with you, I didn't really get into the whole foster thing because of I'm making a film. I mean, my wife and I truly were looking to start a family. We couldn't have children of our own, and we decided to take the foster care route. There's 35,000 children in the foster care system here in Los Angeles County alone, 35,000 kids.
Wow.
And so we decided, like, you know, there's got to be a kid out there that we could help, and we could be a family to. And so we went through the program. We had to go through the whole indoctrination into it, and met a lot of nice people, and joined a really nice agency here in Hollywood. And but it's funny because, you know, I've heard, you know, being around Alex and all these stories, you always hear the horror stories about Child Protective Services and all this, and DCSF and all these government agencies. So it was interesting to kind of come in it through the other direction. And now we entered through the door as parents looking for kids. And so, and we really did enter into it as with, you know, parents with an open heart looking to build a family, and not, you know, some conspiracy-minded filmmaker. Well, you know, I was working on the movie over here that was separate from this, and before you know it, we have this little child in our house, and before you know it, we're being court-ordered to give her Adderall at 6 in the morning.
Yes.
Yeah, which is amphetamine, and we're being court-ordered to give her barbiturates at night. We discovered that the home that she had just come from before us had 10 children living in basically just little tiny beds, all like crammed together. You know, the more kids they can fit into one house, the more money they make.
Wow.
And they would give all the children speed in the morning and tranquilizers at night. It's just a way to just keep the flow of the house going. And
And I know that from personal experience. So I have friends who adopted through the foster care system. We've adopted 2 children. One was an open adoption, the other was a foreign adoption. And we were, quite frankly, we knew about what was going on with the foster care stuff and with CPS, and that's why we did a foreign adoption for the second one. But like I said, we have friends who have done that through the foster care system, and we know how that is, how the government mandates putting them on these very dangerous, very strong drugs. But of course, they're sold by big pharmaceutical companies.
And it's really just a way to the log jam because of the corruption in the system, and you know, we're dealing with laws that are 70 years old. You know, many of the laws regarding the foster system have been on the books now for 70 years. They're completely outdated. Everything is completely outdated and broken and just crumbling. And so they literally have to use drugs to just keep the log jam from getting worse. And so what you learn when you get in there is it's not really all these evil people working in the system. There's actually a lot of good people working in these things, but it's the laws and the system, and everything is so broken and outdated and corrupt and being controlled by the wrong things that it's you know, people are going, I can't believe that they allowed you to get away with this or make this movie, but it's not like anybody was trying to stop us. I mean, they're all working these jobs knowing, yeah, we do think the kids are on too many drugs, but we don't really have a choice. There's nothing
they don't make the policies. Like so many different systems, they don't make the policies. The people, whether it's the military, whether it's the schools, whether it's CPS, the people that are just implementing the policies, if they even think about it, they don't have the capability to really change these policies. They're just kind of cogs in the system. But it's a few people at the very top, people who are with the FDA, people who have made this alliance with the big pharmaceutical companies. They're making the policies. They're setting these policies. They've created the system. They've created the machine.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and I found myself even, in private meetings with highly educated, highly intelligent doctors who I have respect for. And I'm sitting there going, look up who I am. I actually do documentaries about this topic. I travel around the country lecturing at universities about this very subject. And I'm telling you, this child in our home is not being served well by this medication. Now, the girl in the movie, Stephanie, has been returned to her mother. And since then, we've taken on another foster daughter who's basically taking another form. It's not Adderall, but it's close to Adderall. It's a very, very high dose. And you enter in like a whole other tricky aspect, and that is the child themselves actually likes the drugs. And when you start telling the child, like, hey, you're taking this bad drug, we need to get you off of it, they're like, oh, no, I like the drug. And then what do you do, right? And what is the future going to hold for the child that's already like loving this pill they get every morning and the way this pill makes them feel?
Kevin, I think what we're seeing here with CPS is really kind of a microcosm of the entire system that our government and those in big pharmaceutical companies would like to see all of us on. It's not just that they want to get the children on. They would love to get the children on, but you see aspects of it even within the government school system, the overuse of drugs for ADHD, like Ritalin. But they want everybody on these big pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, we moved out to an area about 20 years ago that we didn't get any television reception. And it was really a blessing. We didn't realize it at the time. We really haven't watched television. I mean, we are active on the internet, we watch movies, we do other things, but we were surprised when we went back and looked at television when we'd be traveling or something, and just the number of pharmaceutical commercials that they never even had before, and how predominant they are. I mean, it's the majority of the commercials that are out there. They're really pushing this on society as a whole. It's not just the children in CPS. That's a microcosm of where they want to go.
And I've been told that if you want to see who are the biggest financiers of TV, the big sponsors, watch who is sponsoring the world news.
That's right.
Like go watch like the evening, the main evening news on NBC, CBS, and it is pharmaceutical ads. That's who are like the big donors, and that actually then even became trouble for me getting broadcast for the newer movie, because we're talking about being able to replace a whole drug cabinet, a whole medicine cabinet full of pills with one single plant that you can grow in your backyard. And that very simple message right there led to like us hitting brick walls with getting broadcasts on the second movie.
Well, I've seen something very interesting just the last couple of months actually on the CIA News Network, CNN. They have Sanjay Gupta, who's their doctor, just last week was saying that he's sorry he misled people about the efficacy and the danger of medical marijuana. And when you look at him on these programs talking about how he's changed, why he was misinformed, you realize that even though this man is very intelligent, he's been in this pharmaceutical bubble that MDs kind of live in. He didn't even, as he says, he didn't even look at the efficacy of marijuana. He just saw a lot of studies that had been done that were selective studies that focused on negative aspects of marijuana, but there really weren't studies that were being done that he wasn't aware of. But he was kind of living in this pharmaceutical world, probably like the doctors that you were talking to.
Sure. I mean, and they all do. I mean, because that's how they make a living, you know, absolutely. And, you know, it's interesting too, because the Sanjay Gupta show called Weed, which I recommend everybody watch, just came out this Sunday. And I got to admit, I'm amazed by it, but it almost felt like they watched my newest movie and then went and made the TV show, got it out there, which is totally cool, because all I can say to anybody out there that if you watch the Sanjay Gupta CNN special, then you need to check out American Drug War 2, because it picks up on those exact ideas. It has, you know, like a main story thread about a young boy suffering with brain cancer. You know, it has a lot of the same threads, but we take it to like another level in which I don't think CNN is prepared to broadcast yet. But maybe, you know, who knows?
I'm really kind of wondering what's up with them. I mean, I looked at their website today. Their top story is titled, "Are American Opinions on Marijuana Reaching a Tipping Point?" And if you look at all the different, I mean, it's a little bit late, but it's good that they're reporting some of this stuff. I don't know why they're doing it, because, I mean, they've been very much in the pocket of big pharmaceutical companies, but they're actually talking about some of the effective things, like you mentioned, the brain cancer. There was an article associated with that. Marijuana stops child seizures, talking about Seattle's budding economy, talking about the legalization of it there. And then another article from Melissa Etheridge saying that pot got her through. I mean, it's interesting to see this happening now on CNN. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, you know, I think the conspiracy theorist scared part of me is that the pharmaceutical companies are fixing to come vulturing in on all these, you know, well-meaning. You know, you've had people now that have been working at this, trying to build an organic, non-corrupt marijuana industry for all these years, and there's a lot of really good people out here in California. I go to Denver all the time. I got a lot of dealings in Denver, and I'm working on some other films in Denver. And so I think between, you know, the Los Angeles area, the Oakland, San Francisco area, and the Denver area is kind of like the nucleus of this whole deal. There's a lot of really good people, but there are some very bad apples out there too that are very opportunistic. And I think, you know, the door is open for big corporations to come in and swoop down and really kind of take this thing in an angle which people really don't want to see. With, you know, companies like Monsanto could come in. You know, they're already talking about a year from now there's going to be just regular retail marijuana stores in Denver, not dispensaries, but just like a liquor store. Just like there's the pot store. You don't have to have a prescription or anything to go in there. The Denver scene is pretty crazy right now. I just got back from there. I'm doing a little mini doc about this whole thing all the kids are doing now called dabbing, which takes marijuana to another level. They're all doing this this oil, this very powerful oil, and that's this whole crazy thing. And a lot of people that are negative about this are going to say, well, this is what happens when you legalize it. Kids are going to take it to the next level, you know, and so they're going to use that as an argument. So.
Well, you've talked about in your lecture series, you talked about the difference between THC and cannabis and the medical uses of it. Now, but there's also, you talk in your lecture series about the government has just done a patent
well,
on
not
marijuana?
just, well, God, it's like, 10 years ago. They've had the patent for about 10 years on cannabinoids. Anybody should to Google it. And it's the Department of Health and Human Services. And basically, what's alarming about this is, first of all, the government shouldn't be allowed to take out a patent like this.
That's very strange.
First of all, that's very strange. And the other part that's alarming is that our American government is working with foreign pharmaceutical companies to basically circumvent a lot of like good, smaller American companies that are trying to work on getting the actual natural plant derivative through the FDA process. And something we touch upon in the movie, it's kind of a hard concept to explain in a short amount of time that we have here on this interview. But you can't, with the definition of a patent, you can't really patent a plant. It's too much. You can patent a molecule, you can patent a compound, but you can't patent a plant. And that's why these these companies come in here. And I think the fear that a lot of people in the marijuana industry are having is that if we don't fight the way that the pharmaceutical companies could take this thing, and that is, instead of you being able to grow a single plant in your backyard, that you can treat your anxiety, your sleeplessness, your pain, your nausea, their whole laundry list of things with, they're going to try to basically tear the marijuana plant down into like 40 different prescription medications to where you have to take this pill based on these 1 or 2 cannabinoids that we find are best for sleep. Then you have to take this spray to use these 2 cannabinoids that we find are best for pain.
Or they might go in and genetically modify it, combine it with a scorpion stinger or something like that. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we've seen them do in the past, just so that they can own it and control it. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for talking to us. We're real excited about this documentary, a very powerful way to get the truth out to people. There we go. There's the documentary right there.
And, only on InfoWars.
Only on InfoWars can you get the DVD. We're the sole dealer for that. We've got something of a truth cartel going on there with that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing people to get this truth out to their neighbors and friends. And a great way to do that is to just hand them a DVD. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks.